Hello, beautiful human. Welcome back to the Unstoppable You podcast. I'm Evie. I'm your host, life and confidence coach and business mentor. And we're back with another episode. And I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's dive into the conversation today because we've got lots to cover. I'm excited for this one. I have written down 2 sentences for this podcast episode. And the rest, I'm going to riff. The rest, I'm trusting that it's going to come. I think these are the best episodes anyway. Now, welcome back to the podcast. If you are new around here, what I wanted to share was that I always start off every podcast episode with a quote. I love quotes. I love inspiration. I have them on my vision board above me here in my office. And yeah, I'm just a sucker for a really good quote. I think it's really nice to have like a mantra or a quote or like some kind of thing that just hits you and something that you just need to hear in those moments. You know what I mean? So today's quote for this episode is really fitting for the conversation today. As I was thinking, I was actually in meditation before I jumped on the podcast here. And this is how I like to do things is I was like, oh, I didn't actually have a podcast episode written down for today in my schedule because I generally work a week or two out. And I have just finished up launching the mastermind, or when this releases, it'll be just about the end of the mastermind launch. If you're interested, might be still time to jump on in. We'll link it in the show notes in the description below. So definitely come over and reach out if you're interested. However, I was thinking about, so I'd sort of obviously planned that launch, and then I was like, okay, cool. What do I want to talk about now? And this is going to be a really personal podcast episode, I think, because this has been on my heart for a while. It's been a long time coming, I feel like, and I'm really excited to shift gears slightly and be talking more about life coaching, be talking more about mindset work, be talking more about belief and confidence and worthiness and stopping people pleasing and living in your heads and your inner critic and doubting yourself and all of the things that takes you away from your essence and your truth and living from a place of love and abundance and trust and worthiness. And those are things that are so dear to my heart, something that I'm really passionate about. And essentially the reason why I started my business in the first place was because this work changed my life. Quite literally, I know that's a cliche, but quite literally changed my life. And so yeah, I want to share more about this. I'm really excited. If you are a business owner, I still think you can take so much from this because many of these principles about life coaching and personal development work and doing the inner work is relevant for all humans, no matter where you choose to spend your love and your time and your energy, no matter what you call work, no matter if you're in business or not, no matter if you're if you're a coach or not yourself. I think these are things that all humans, or most humans at least, need to hear. And yeah, I'm really excited to really be sharing more about this stuff. And yeah, and I feel like there's another layer of authenticity to come through and alignment and just yeah, I'm just excited for this. There's so much more to come. I feel like that just probably deserves its own YouTube video in and of itself, which I think I will actually share. I know I was meant to be sharing about my why I bought YouTube back, which I need to mentally note that down for some time to come. However, we digress. I've given you a really big backstory into this podcast episode, but I hope you're still here listening. Okay, so my quote is around the topic of today's podcast episode, which is all about how to overcome self-doubt and how to really trust yourself again, how to listen to your own innate inner wisdom. And yeah, I'm going to talk a whole lot more about that. So the quote today is actually one from Tony Robbins. I went to one of his events many years ago now, and it was so impactful. I'll do another episode on that. That's another whole conversation. However, this is one of the quotes that he shared there. And I remember this one. And when I was thinking about this conversation today that I wanted to have with you guys around self-doubt, this was the thing that was just screaming at me. And this is the quote: "If you're in your head, you're dead." Tony Robbins, if you're in your head, you're dead. It's like a classic, hard-hitting truth, a punchy quote, right? And I think that that's so classic of Tony Robbins, but it's so true. So if you're in your head, you're dead is what the quote is. And I think that that really relates to our conversation today. Okay, so let's dive into the juicy content. Let's talk about self-doubt. Do you know what came to me in my meditation when I was thinking about this podcast episode, and what I really wanted to talk about was this. It was that I think that we are in a self-doubt crisis. I think there's a self-doubt crisis going on in many humans and in many communities. And I think it's that for a number of different reasons. And here's some of the things that I think is contributing to why I think we have a self-doubt crisis. So if you are someone who has ever experienced any doubt, when you doubt yourself, when your mind plays tricks on you, when your inner critic's really loud and playing out all of the fear stories and all of the doubt, this podcast episode is absolutely for you. I want you to remember this one, come back to this one, save this one. Maybe you listen to this a few different times if you need to be reminded of these truths, because I'd love this to be that resource for you to come back to this and be reminded of this stuff. So I hope that this is a podcast episode that you come back to, save, and come back to, or share with your friends and your family. I would love for you to do that so much. It really is the only way that we get out this podcast to more and more humans. So I believe that we're in a self-doubt crisis for a number of different reasons. I think that generally speaking, the way society is growing, the way technology is designed and working and becoming even more of a forefront in our lives, I feel like year on year, more so than ever, we are looking outside of ourselves for our answers. And when we look outside of ourselves for our answers, immediately it's going to cause doubt, because there are so many different options. There's so many different opinions. There's so many different answers. There's so many different viewpoints on stuff. And so no one is ever going to be able to tell you what the right decision is for you or what you should be doing here. And if you follow that, sure, that might give your mind some validation, some sense of security, or some control, quote unquote control, or something to follow, that rule book to follow. But ultimately, that is not the path to living a life that's true and authentic to you. And that's really authentic and aligned to you. And so I think there's a number of different reasons. I think just generally that rule of thumb is, and that sort of the trend and the shift that we've been seeing for some time now, a long time coming, is just generally that shift from looking externally and outside of ourselves for our answers. We've seen that in social media. We spend so much more time externally looking at other people's stuff, reading other people's things, listening to other things, instead of internal time. We often will get caught up in people-pleasing spirals, and that's another whole conversation in and of itself. But ultimately, that's looking outside of ourselves for the rule book and to please others, to fit in, to be liked, etc. I think also in the last few years, it's been a challenging time in the world, right? We've had the global pandemic, we've had COVID, we've had the economic shifts and changes and effects of that as well. We've had huge, atrocious wars going on in the world, all of these things that are feeding into doubt, that are feeding into fear, that are feeding into scarcity. And that, I think, is huge. And so I feel like even though we're coming out of some of that stuff, or we're seeing, we're still relatively in the aftermath of that stuff, in the rebuilding after that stuff. And I think that contributes to it. And then, of course, on an individual level, there might be loads of different things that are going on for you. I know self-doubt personally has creeped up a little bit more since I became a mum, especially in that earlier stages of being a first-time mama and learning that, and being really sleep deprived and not having, my morning routine or so much time to spend on myself and connecting with myself. And so living a lot more externally again. And reacting obviously and naturally as I wanted to and as I should do as a new mama. But that played a part for me personally as well. And you might have other things that are going on in your world as well, shifts and changes that cause doubt. It might be that you're spending more time with different people or in different parts of your life, or with things that aren't quite fully in true alignment with you anymore. And that's feeding into some doubt or some scarcity or some new thoughts that perhaps aren't true and right for you. And so there's a number of different reasons and Yeah, there's a number of different reasons why I think that there is a self-doubt crisis, but I really think that it's time to start taking action and talking about this. And this is why I wanted to talk about this topic today, because I think no matter if you're in business or not, no matter who you are, no matter, what's going on for you, if we spend too much time living externally or living in our heads, we will just be plagued by self-doubt and fear and scarcity. So there's a lot of I feel like this topic is going to open up so many more conversations and topics for me to talk about here on the podcast and educate you guys on and coach you around. And obviously we'll love to do that and share those in time to come, because I feel like there's a lot to cover here. But the main thing I really wanted to share was this permission and encouragement, this nudging for you if it feels good to do so. If you feel like you're getting stuck in fear and doubt and scarcity and all of the buts and all of the wobbles and all of the what ifs and overthinking and over analyzing, then I see you, I hear you. Let's start to make some changes to support you to come back into your center, into your intuition, into your body, into trusting yourself more, into feeling more confidence and worthiness and trust within yourself, and knowing that you have all of the answers that you ever need within yourself. And this is where we want to be looking at internal validation, at building that connection within yourself, building that relationship with your intuition, with your heart space, with your truth, with what really matters to you, and living from that place. Because that place is like that really quiet, grounded, nurturing, reassuring, loving voice of your intuition. So go back to listen to some of the very first podcast episodes where I talk about the difference between your intuition versus your inner critic. So just a real brief overview here, because I think it's important to share, is that there's two different voices, there's two different energies, there's two different ways of living and energies that we can live from. There's either fear or love. And it's either the inner critic or the intuition. So your inner critic, you might call it the fear voice, you might call it your ego, you might call it your inner mean girl. That is that loud chitter chatter in your mind that's telling you all of the buts, the what ifs, the shoulds, the shouldn'ts, and essentially spirals into that fear-based thinking of all of the possibilities of what could go wrong, or looking for evidence as to why you shouldn't do something or why you should. And we just get trapped in this spiral of it's that monkey mind of thought to thought to thought, over analyzing, overthinking everything. That is your fear. That is your inner critic. That is the ego. That is always, 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 always primed. Our primitive brain is primed for safety and survival. It'll always be looking out for the fear. It'll always be looking out for what's wrong or what could potentially go wrong instead of what could potentially go right, and all the good things. Yeah. So there's that. And that's where essentially the doubt is born. When we're thinking about those thoughts, we're letting our inner critic overrule us, or it's dialed up really loud. And it often is the place where we're looking externally. So we're scrolling social media to numb ourselves, or we're looking externally to what everyone else is doing and getting caught up in comparisonitis. Or we're people pleasing and we're looking at those other people about, oh, how can I fit in? How can I do things to please other people so that they love and accept me, etc. We're looking for the rule book. We're looking for, you get the point. We're looking externally. Yeah. So that's fear, that's doubt, that's inner critic. That's the one way of living and being and feeding. Yeah. The other, the flip of that, which I would really encourage you to start to foster, adopt, connect with. And I hope that this is a really great reminder and some, at least a starting point for you to start to do some of this work for yourself, is really connecting back with your intuition, with your inner knowing, with your heart space, your soul's voice, your true self, you might like to call it. There's a number of different ways that a number of different words or names that you could use to describe this. But that is your truth. That is your essence. That is who you truly are. That is love. That is trust. That is your inner compass. That's your inner wisdom, your inner guidance. And no one can take that away from you. And that is always there and always available to you. And everyone has an intuition. You might think that you can't hear your intuition, or maybe it doesn't exist for you, or Yeah, you might think that it doesn't exist. That's probably just because you're living so much in your mind, in your inner critic, and in your ego's voice, and you haven't connected deeply with yourself or quietened down the mind to get really still so that you can hear its whispers. Another beautiful quote that I love here, which again could be a whole nother whole nother conversation, is that the fear or the ego, the mind, the inner critic will scream at you, but your intuition whispers to you. And I think that's a really nice one to remember, that the louder voice is the inner critic, is the fear-based voice, and that's often louder and it screams at you and it's trying to keep you safe. So of course it's like, hey, don't do that, or what about this, or you shouldn't stretch your comfort zone in that way because that's risky, that's scary, like we should just stay in your comfort zone here and don't do that thing. So that's going to be loud, right? But your intuition whispers to you. And so that's a really good indication that we need to quieten down. We need to have more time connecting inwards and less time living our lives externally on social media with other people, comparing ourselves, all like consuming media all of the time and filling up all of our space and our time and our days. We need to reserve some time for yourself. So the first point I would share with you, my biggest tip, if nothing else, is spending more time internally, spending less time, even if you can carve out 5 to 10 minutes a day of quiet stillness, of meditation, of connecting with your breath, of perhaps some journaling for you, and really connecting with your intuition. And for some of you, that will be a really tricky process straight away because you're so primed and used to spending all of your time in your head and in your mind and in your inner critic. So it'll take some adjustments, right? But this is absolutely something that we all have potential to do. You all have capacity to do this. So getting still and quiet and listening to your own inner wisdom, your own truth. Listen to the whispers of your intuition, of your soul's voice, because that's where the answers lie. That's where your gifts are. That's where that loving reassurance is. And what I've learned to be true every single time I do this, but I remember when I was first doing this work of myself in my early to mid 20s, was when I realized that I was looking externally for someone to reassure me, to calm down my inner critic and the fear voice and the doubt that I used to live my whole life in, and the people pleasing stuff. And that was me. That was me. I know. I've come along. I've come a long way. But that was me. And I lived so much of my life in my head and in the fear voice and the doubt and the what ifs and the buts and the perfectionism and all of these things. And I remembered that I was always looking externally for someone to reassure me, for someone to tell me the right answers, for someone to, calm down that inner critic and that fear voice, that anxiety that I used to feel all of the time. And when I learned to connect to my intuition, I learned all about it and what to do and how to do it. And I developed this beautiful, loving connection with my true self, with my intuition, and spent so much more time there and love and care there and really nurturing that connection with myself. There is nothing like it. No one else can reassure you like your soul can, like your intuition can. Truly, truly. And I would love for us all to get to that point where we no longer look externally or to other people for our answers and we're looking within. And that's essentially the whole premise of coaching, of life coaching. The whole premise of it is not your coach to tell you what to do. Sure, they'll give you suggestions. We'll be talking about these kind of conversations. Sure, it'll be about, giving you some guidance and reflecting back what you're sharing so that you can see your insights and your reflections and you can take the learnings and you can start to implement this for yourself. But ultimately, your true answers, the reassuring voice, like what's true for you, will always come from within. It can't come externally. It can't come from anyone else because it's not your truth, right? Like you can, sure, resonate with other people. You might have similar values and similar ideas and really like this person and connect with them and they're one of your people. 100%. I've got lots of people in my life like that. But they don't replace my intuition. They don't and can't tell me exactly what is right for me. And I think the best humans, the best coaches, but also the really great support people in your world. And yeah, it'll be wonderful if you can develop this either with a coach, develop with yourself, but also with your close connections and your close circle. Is the best connections and people like this are the ones that hear you and see you. They don't solve or answer all of your problems for you. They might give you some loving nudges and suggestions, but ultimately they're supporting you to come back to your truth and come back to your inner knowing and being your cheerleader. But they're not saying, hey, look, this is what you need to do. So if you're finding yourself saying, hey, I would just wish someone could tell me what the right thing to do is right now, or like I can't make this decision and I'm agonizing over it, or I'm in business and I'm doubting myself and I'm like, oh man, I'm not getting the results that I really want to. And what am I doing wrong? And blah, blah, blah. Or in any area of your life, in your relationships, in your professional career and life, if you're doubting yourself, if you're listening to the fear voice, if you're worrying about things, if you're overanalyzing, overthinking, spiraling, people pleasing, then I would really encourage you to come back to your intuition and start to foster that connection with yourself. That is, I think, the biggest gift you can give to yourself is to develop that inner connection with your true self so that you can live your life from your intuition. And your intuition is always there to support you and lovingly guide you if you choose to listen to it, if you choose to foster it and connect with it more and more and more. And this is a consistent practice, guys. This isn't a one and done thing. Sure, once you've built that habit and that ability to hear your intuition and connect with it more and more, then it becomes easier and faster, and you'll probably hear it a whole lot more. It becomes louder, and we can dial down the volume on your inner critic and the fear voice. So then you can hear those whispers a whole lot more and a whole lot more easily in real time, as you're going about your day, as opposed to always in meditation or always in a journaling session. But you still want to connect with it. You still want to spend some time tuning in and listening. Yeah? So if you take anything from this podcast episode today, I would love for you to start thinking about, am I actually giving myself time, quiet time by myself where I can connect in with my true self and I can start to listen to my intuition and connect with that? Am I doing that for myself or not? And how can I? How can I start to do that, or do that more perhaps if you're already doing it, but maybe we just need to ramp that up. Maybe it needs to be a bit more consistent, or it needs to be a little bit longer, or maybe this is the permission slip to say, let's make this a priority and a focus in your intention, at least for the next little while. Let's say the next week. Do it every single day. And then we can grow it from there. So I really, just to sort of recap and summarize, I really feel like we're in this self-doubt crisis for many different reasons. We're living far too externally than we really should be doing. And we need to start connecting back inwards and building that loving relationship with our true self, with our intuition, so we can hear that loving voice, so we can hear that reassurance, we can hear our own innate wisdom and answers for ourselves. I really like the idea of leading with your heart, leading with your intuition and your soul's voice, and being guided by your head. So we're leading with intuition. That is like the yes, no, the start, stop. That's the direction. And we just guide it slightly with our logical mind. Because we still live in a logical world, right? Like we still need to have, the mind is still helpful in many ways. But if we're only listening to our mind, we're only listening to the fear voice and the inner critic, that's what leads and just feeds off self-doubt and creates more and more and more of that. And that's no way to live your life. There's no way to live your life. And I would love to offer you, an alternative here and a solution here for you. And that is this beautiful, loving, reassuring voice of your intuition, living with heart and soul, living from your truth, living with love and authenticity and alignment. No more people pleasing, no more self-doubt, no more inner critic, no more comparisonitis. Living your life for you, living your truth, and living this beautiful, connected life. It's everything. It's wonderful. So I would really love to hear what you think of this podcast episode. I've got a beautiful life coaching program in the works coming really soon. I'm not going to share too much more about it just yet, but I'm really excited for this. So if you loved this podcast episode, if you love these kind of conversations, you will absolutely love this program. It's going to be, as accessible as it possibly can be, because I think so many more humans need this. We need this. We definitely need this. So my loves, that is it from me today. Thank you so much. Send me a DM on Instagram. I'll link it in the show notes below or in the description if you're watching over on YouTube. Please give me some feedback on this. I would love to hear from you and love to hear if you've liked this and enjoyed this conversation. And I can't wait to be back with you and talking about this a whole lot more. All right, my loves, stay true to yourself. Spend some internal time for yourself today and forevermore. And watch your life transform in the most magical ways, in the most wonderful ways. All right, all my love, gorgeous humans, we'll talk soon.